Hello, Elevate Church. My name is Patricia, and I'm here to share with you guys my quiet time. And recently, I read about the story of Jesus walking on water. So I'll be reading in Mark chapter 6, verse 45 through 56. And so here it reads, "Immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to Bethsaida, while he dismissed the crowd. After leaving them, he went up on a mountainside to pray. When evening came, the boat was in the middle of the lake, and he was alone on land. He saw the disciples straining at the oars because the wind was against them. Shortly before dawn, he went out to them, walking on the lake. He was about to pass by them, but when they saw him walking on the lake, they thought he was a ghost. They cried out because they all saw him and were terrified. Immediately he spoke to them and said, 'Take courage, it is I, don't be afraid.' Then he climbed into the boat with them, and the wind died down. They were completely amazed, for they had not understood about the loaves. Their hearts were hardened. But when they had crossed over, they landed at Gennesaret and anchored there. As soon as they got out of the boat, people recognized Jesus. They ran throughout that whole region and carried the sick on mats to wherever they heard he was. And wherever he went, into villages, towns, or countryside, they placed the sick in the marketplaces. They begged him to let them touch even the edge of his cloak, and all who touched him were healed." And so, I wanted to have, this quiet time, Jesus walking on water, because here, Jesus demonstrates his power over nature. So in the beginning of the story, Jesus, he made his disciples get into the boat. And I related this with us and how, many times Jesus will make us do things, things that we don't want to do, and we just have to listen and obey him. And when we don't obey, we miss out on his teachings and lessons he's trying to teach us and wants us to attain. And so, just thinking of all of Jesus' teachings, they require us trusting in him wholeheartedly and really obeying him out of love. And here afterwards, it says that Jesus left the disciples to pray, and he was alone on land. The boat got to the middle of the lake, so Jesus walked on water towards them. And the disciples thought he was a ghost and got scared. And immediately he spoke to them and said, "Take courage, it is I, don't be afraid." And so here, Jesus, he speaks to us immediately when we're feeling scared, nervous, anxious, overwhelmed, stressed. Here he tells us to take courage, to be strong, to trust in him. And here he says, "It is I," and I think of how powerful that statement is, because God is so powerful and nothing can change his power. Here he says, "Don't be afraid," so there's no need to fear because God is greater than our fears. And when they reached land, people were so desperate for Jesus. They touched just the edge of his cloak and were healed immediately. And they begged him. And the question that I ask myself is, am I begging before Jesus to receive healing? Am I as desperate as the crowd? And so here, in this story, what I got from it is to really trust in God's powers, to not doubt or fear anything. God is greater than our fears and worries. I just have to listen and obey him and let go of control, because, God is more, he's greater. And then I also had my next quiet time. It's similar to this story, and the story is on Jesus calming the storm in Luke chapter 8, so verse 22. And here it reads, "One day Jesus said to his disciples, 'Let us go over to the other side of the lake.' So they got into a boat and set out. As they sailed, he fell asleep. A squall came down on the lake so that the boat was being swamped, and they were in great danger. The disciples went and woke him, saying, 'Master, Master, we're going to drown.' He got up and rebuked the wind and the raging waters. The storm subsided, and all was calm. 'Where is your faith?' he asked his disciples. In fear and amazement, they asked one another, 'Who is this? He commands even the winds and the water, and they obey him.'" And so here, Jesus, he tells his disciples to go to the other side of the lake. And here Jesus, he fell asleep. And so, I feel like, Jesus did this on purpose to really test the disciples. And here, the boat was swamped and they were in great danger. And with us too, we can get swamped. We can feel like we're placed in great danger, but, God allows this to happen. And here the disciples' reaction, they said, Master, Master, we're going to drown. And this is how we can respond to Jesus when we are undergoing hardships and sufferings. We're afraid we'll drown, but that's really lacking faith. And here, Jesus, he rebuked the wind and the raging waters, and all was calm. And so God's power is always at work. He's more powerful than nature. He's always, he always comes through at the right timing. And here he asks his disciples, where is your faith? And so, I reflected this with myself, and, I shouldn't make Jesus question my faith. I need to stop doubting and always trust in him and his powers. And here the disciples were in fear and amazement. And for me, is this my reaction when Jesus calms the storms in my life? Here he commands even the winds and water, and they obey him. So Jesus can make the winds and water obey him. What more us? How is our obedience to God like? And so here, what I got from this story, is to really trust and obey God throughout the storm, because Jesus will calm it. And I have to stay faithful no matter what happens in my life, and really rely on his powers, because God can do anything.